Blog Talk Radio.
There's been an awakening. Have you felt it? You are listening to Dark Matter Radio with your host, Ronnie.
Good day, everyone. This is Dark Matter Radio with your host, Ronnie McLean. We have two very important and very special guests that we have on here today. And in the first half hour or 20 minutes of the show, we did have some technical difficulties, but we're back now, and everything seems to be rolling along pretty well. So today's show is extremely important. Did Jim Crow just get elected? Did slavery ever end? Today on Dark Matter Radio, special program on the election of Donald Trump and what it really means to the original indigenous beings of America. So some may say that we could be entering into another phase of Jim Crow. Others say polling shows that 90% of the original indigenous Americans voted Democrat, while 90% of the uneducated whites voted Republican. CNN, Fox News, and CNBC, as well as Alex Jones, is reporting that there are widespread revolts all across America. Is this really true? And how is it going to affect the moving forward process for the original indigenous beings of North America? On tap today is Cory Mitchel out of New York City, longtime businessman, and Reggie Bryant, a 20-year professional recruiter of Pitney Bows and many other different companies in the state, out of the state of Atlanta, Georgia, to help and aid us in this very important perspective today on Dark Matter Radio with your host, Ronnie McLean. And remember, believe for you anything is possible. Please log on to Blog Talk Radio and share, and also follow and like, and also on the Facebook page as well. So as I introduced my two very important guests today, we have Cory Mitchel. They're out of New York City. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Brother McLean. How you doing?
Great. We also have Reggie Bryant, who is out of Atlanta, Georgia. How are you doing today as well?
I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me to the show.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you both being here. So let's just get into the heart of the matter. I mean, there's an awful lot of things that are going on and that have been going on surrounding this one particular election in terms of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And as I ask you guys, let's just have a really good, honest discussion, holding nothing back. Let me just get your impressions of what this election meant for each of you. Cory, you can go first.
To each of us, to myself, I guess this election, for me, I'm kind of at a crossroads at it, to be honest. It's not the fact of that Donald Trump was elected. It's the fact of how much of Congress got reelected on the Republican side, and also how much Republicans took the Senate. I think if you put everything in its own perspective, it's a very rude awakening in some cases. Honestly, I didn't think that a guy who could be as honest and also a liar, who could disrespect every single race that's walking on this country of America, who could disrespect women, who could disrespect anybody, would get reelected on the level that he did. But I guess I was surely mistaken on some cases. I think it's a wake-up call for all Americans, not just black Americans, but all Americans, not just indigenous Americans, Because a lot of time we base things off of perspective that if somebody has wealth, it must mean he's knowledgeable and knows what he's doing, even though the guy doesn't have to prove his wealth. You know, it's time for us to really step back and look at things and reorganize and really take things into, you know, a certain level of spectrum.
So, and Reggie, how are you viewing things at this point right now with the election being over?
I will admit that when it first happened, it was hard for me to digest, and I kind of unplugged myself from all electronic media for a couple of days. And very surprised because the polls, as the professional pollsters put it, Hillary was way out in front and she would win the election quite easily. So I'm a little shocked there. But then I had to kind of grab myself up and realize that the population feels pretty much the way those who opposed Obama felt after the election. And I certainly respect that the American people have spoken. And I might not be happy with the results, but it is nothing that we can do can change it at this point. The reality is that we have to refocus, re-strengthen, and kind of figure out where we fit into this grand scheme.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Well, that's interesting because I've been looking at a lot of the polls before the election and a couple of months, maybe even 3 months before the election, and a lot of different polling areas. I mean, when you look at CNN and you look at CNBC and channels like that, they all were outfitted in blue and they all had Hillary Clinton pretty much leading 100% of the way. But when you looked at some of the other polling stats in America, they were telling a really completely different story and how Donald Trump was actually ahead in most of these polls by at least 2 to 3% at every time. And it seemed to me that it was a concerted effort between almost all of the news agencies, except maybe for Fox News, that Hillary Clinton was pretty much a shoo-in to win. And from the data that I was getting, it didn't really look that way. And the other thing is that when you talk about how, I mean, you guys sound like, just totally really upset, and it seems as though how the news media had placed it is that almost 100% of the blacks were against Donald Trump. And again, when I looked at the polling data and talked to a lot of people around the country, a lot of people were for Donald Trump. What do you think about that?
I think that if you look at what a lot of the folks who voted for Trump, they were looking from a jobs perspective, and when they speak that language that we're taking our country back, I think it spoke to what they were looking for. And whether you agree with it or not, he found a way to get those people excited. It's my understanding that a lot of people who never voted before, they came out to support him. And if I remember correctly, they're saying that the population for folks in total who voted in this election, it was down. So I think with a lot of folks thinking that Hillary was a shoo-in, some folks didn't get out there to vote and support her, and this is the end result.
Well, you also got to remember back in 2008 on that election with Mitt Romney, they had Mitt Romney ahead by a wide range, saying that he was going to win this election, Obama was losing. And then the day of the election, Obama completely rewrote the map. And then if you look into the data, all the other stuff in the background was saying, all the other polls in the background was saying that Obama was leading by 2-3 points. So a lot of times we can't trust what the national polls are saying as far as Fox or NBC or CNN and all these other stuff is telling us. If you speak to America, I have a friend who's a trucker, and he's out on the road a lot, and from what he was telling me throughout the whole process, that a lot of people was leaning towards Trump. Everywhere he went, he saw a Trump sign. He saw more Trump people out there than he actually saw people out there for Hillary.
I think a question that folks need to I apologize. I think that one of the things that we need to focus on is why a lot of folks did not vote for Hillary. And so I think that's part of the equation as well, that certainly there was a big uptick in folks that did not support the candidate. And did not come out to vote for her. So I think that's something Democrats need to go back and re-examine as well. Why weren't the Hillary fans as excited as the Trump fans?
Well, my thing is that when Hillary had a chance to win Florida, she had a chance to win Michigan, and a few of these other swing states. The last bit of voting that had to be had to come in were areas in what we would call the so-called inner cities and black areas, and they were. I'm telling you, I was watching them, and they were ecstatic that these were the last areas to come in because they said that it was almost impossible for her to lose these votes because all of these quote-unquote so-called black people were going to come vote for her aid. But in turn, as you began to start watching how these votes were coming in, Trump was constantly gaining in those electoral areas, and Clinton was either remaining the same or falling behind. So I'm thinking what they're not reporting is that there were more so-called black or so-called African-American people that voted for Donald Trump than what they're what they're trying to lead people to believe. Therefore, creating a type of psychosomatic imagery that it's racist in terms of creating some sort of a race war.
That's a very interesting perspective. I think that when you look at the polls and some of the information that I have been privy to see, it looks like the majority of people of color voted for Hillary, but I do believe there were pockets out there that supported Trump, and where they might not come out in person and say that they support Trump. In that booth, it's totally different where you're alone and you get to decide whether it's Hillary or Trump. So I think that he did have a large portion of people of color's votes, and that possibly could have put him over the top.
Well, he definitely had a large portion of Latino votes when it came out. I think he got 34% men vote, 32% women Latino votes, which was shocking because nobody expected him to get that much. But at the same token, I think the idea now is to basically focus on how do we move forward. You know, I think we always stuck in a position where we always looking backwards. You know?
And I just wanted to get this point out. Yeah, go ahead.
You know, and I want to just chime in a little bit because there were a lot of young people that didn't want to support Hillary, that were traditional Democrats or millennials that were coming out and voting. So one of the problems that I see is that the Democratic Party, they pretty much put Hillary there, and they did not give options to other candidates that might have been stronger, might have done better against Trump than Hillary. And I kind of, and I know the forces were against her, and I know that you had the Russians' allegations of them with the emails, with the Wikipedia, and some of the outside forces. But I think some of the damaging things is that when she spoke to different audiences, per se, if you look at the Wall Street crowd, she was speaking their language. And I think a lot of voters could not trust her.
You know what? I have to chime in on that because I think on a lot of areas we forget that, our whole political cycle is already corrupted. I mean, most of our news organizations owned by corporations. And depending on what corporations own is depending on what kind of news you own. So if you might have a lot of political people out there who don't get the airtime that Hillary would get. So people don't get to see them. Or when it comes down to big elections, the news basically report what they want to put out there, which could hurt or destroy a candidate. There's a lot of stuff that was held back from about Donald Trump that really didn't get out there, where there's a lot of stuff that Hillary that was put out.
Well, what about Donald Trump? What was it about Donald Trump that they didn't put out there that you think that the media was hiding back on him? Because I think that they put out everything that they possibly could, and they were giving a very soft landing to Hillary Clinton and everything that she did.
I think that, when you look at the financial thing, this is probably the first time in my mind that you can remember a candidate for presidency where they did not release their tax forms. That was very surprising that he wasn't forced to do so to run for office.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to that, there were a lot of allegations out there, but I think those could be very, very distracting on both sides because whether it's Trump or Hillary, there were things out there that didn't bode well for a lot of the folks that were out there voting. In the end, you have to look at that the support for Hillary was sold from a Democratic side, and you can't blame Republicans for that. I think it's a Democratic issue, the DNC, they kind of forced, and I'll be very honest with you, I did not support Hillary in regards to that. I did not. And they should have given us different options.
Well, what other option was the Democratic Party going to give to the people? Because they had Bernie Sanders, who was a staunch, this guy's a staunch communist. He's not even a socialist. He's a staunch communist. And he really didn't give two craps of anything dealing with what was going on in our community, although he tried to sell it in that way. And who else did they have? I mean, they had Biden.
I think they could have put Elizabeth Warren. Certainly, I like her. I like the work that she's done against Wall Street and her record. I think that could have been a little bit more exciting. She has not aligned herself with those powers that be that really have a say-so in how this country is run. I think they kind of shut her out and push her to the side, and they really focused on pushing Hillary's candidacy forward. And you have to be careful here, right? Because, of course, I'm from the older generation, but my kids have different viewpoints. And so they have to remember that you have to track that those young voters as well. And they probably, in the end, did not vote for her as much as they should have.
Well, they had Bernie Sanders.
Well, it wasn't like Obama running. It wasn't like Obama running. When Obama ran, he gave people a reason to want to get out there and vote. Other than her being the first woman president, she really didn't push herself. She didn't run her election to win. And there's certain states she didn't even go to, like Wisconsin. She took them for granted. So a lot of these young people coming out to vote the first time only knew what they knew of her from emails that wasn't released.
Which, in my opinion, is a heck of a lot worse than Donald Trump not releasing his taxes. I mean, I think, when you're up for indictment and almost 3 times now, and all 3 times, somewhere along the line, these indictments get frauded for whatever purposes. But I think that...
the problem with Donald Trump not releasing his taxes, to me, is that you don't know where his money coming from or who he's associating his money with. And that's what the taxes show. His taxes shows if he's getting loans from foreign countries, like, let's say, Russia or Saudi Arabia. So that's what the tax thing is really for.
A couple of things with that. When you have the political situation in terms of having to divulge your financial stuff, they have to do a complete, very thorough financial statement and hand it in to the Department of Elections. Not only that, when you come down to talking about having foreign companies donating, the Supreme Court made it legal about 3 or 4 years ago that any company is now considered to be a person, and they can donate as much money as they see fit to any candidate for any purpose as they choose. Because every
candidate, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true to a candidate. But if you're a private citizen and you got a lot of business and a lot of money coming in from outside sources, how would that also influence you as a president or as a senator or as a congressman? See, my thing isn't as Donald Trump as much as it is as the Congress and the Senate, because the Congress does most of the work. The Congress is the purse. We keep forgetting how important the Congress is. Everybody always looking at, look at Obamacare, look at this, look at that, but they don't look at the bills or what the Congress has said. A president signs a bill, but it has to be approved and passed over from Congress to Senate. So we forget about the job that Congress do.
Yeah, and that's the reason why.
That's a lot of problems.
I got to tell you, I got to tell you, as I looked at that map on election day, what shocked me is how divided this country is. And it's really divided. When you look at it, when it's highlighted in red and blue, and they certainly have the right to support the candidates they want, and we support the candidates that we want. But it's just shocking, the divide in this country, that we don't come together as Americans. To me, that's the most profound thing.
Well, for the past, I mean, if you look at the election boards for the past almost 75 years or so, the country has been as divided as it is today, and the deciding factor in just about every election is what you consider to be the quote-unquote African American or so-called black vote in America, which pushes one side over the other. And usually what happens is that the black vote always comes out very heavily and very strong for the Democratic vote, which kind of which always propels the Democrats. At least it did up until about 50 years ago. Up until about maybe I think it was like about 10 years ago, the Democrats had nothing but strong support, and they ran the House, they also ran the Congress, and they also ran the presidency. And even when Nixon was in office, I believe that the Democrats were in power. So and also throughout the 60s, when they had the Civil Rights Movement, guess who was in power? It was the Democrats. The Democrats were in power trying to thwart anything dealing with the Civil Rights Movement, which was a precursor to what's going on today in terms of the moving forward process. But it's that so-called African American vote that has always pushed one side or the other to victory, and which leads me to think that I think that the demographics of the United States, there's more quote-unquote African American, quote-unquote black people, original Indigenous Americans in this country than what they're saying that there are, because we had that much influence on the election. And this election was no different.
You know what? I think the whole thing is that we as black people, we have to start looking at our influences. I mean, we are the largest spenders when it comes to buying, and, you know, we go out and we spend the most money in this country and stuff like that. You know, I'm looking at all these people out here, and, you know, they're mad and they're angry and they're boycotting, and they're, you know, I think we have to learn how to protest in a new way, honestly. If you're mad and you're angry, we got to stop tearing down stuff, for number one. We have to stop burning down stuff, number two. You know, honestly, we destroy things. We destroy people's property. We destroy stuff. We burn down gas station stores. But 9 out of 10, we end up doing these people favors, because they get the insurance money, and if they want to relocate, they relocate somewhere else. It's not really hurting. It might hurt for a short time until that insurance money come in. What we need to do is take our money and our stuff and really be powerful by not spending. We need to pull back. The only way that you could really get people to understand in this country, the only way you could really get people to understand how powerful you are is stop spending your money. We need to set, you know, you go into most black neighborhoods, we have more expensive cars than anywhere else. We have more expensive electronics than anywhere else. You go to any black neighborhood, you'll probably see anywhere between a Lexus, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz parked on the same street. Where if you go to any upper middle-class neighborhood, you see more older cars. We need to financially get ourselves together and to financially support one another and stop spending our money. And when we do that, this is when people will really take us serious on everything else. This is when you really hurt our country or hurt what you're trying to do. I believe in a lot of stuff. I believe in Black Lives Matter. I believe in all lives matter. But the way we keep doing things the wrong way. Until we go out there and we stop buying those Mercedes-Benz or Lexus, until we start buying those Jordans, until we get out there and stop buying the Nikes, who won't even put a thing here for our people to have any kind of work. They won't ever open up a shop here for people to go in and make shoes, but they'll sell them here. Until we really seriously saying that we can pull back and do what we did in the 60s, what made a movement in the 60s was that we was able to boycott buses, and that hurt the economy. And when you hurt the economy, people automatically want to sit down at the table with you. And that's what makes us different than any other race. You know, other races, if you do something to a Jew, the Jews will all band together and they'll pull their money. And they'll hurt your economy. No matter what people say or do or speak about us, we go out there and buy their stuff anyway to try to prove to them that we're worth it. And we need to stop doing that. We need to change our mentality.
I think
think about?
Well, I think this is a harbinger, and for me, I think when you align yourself with both parties and you look to benefit from them, I think you'll solely be disappointed. And so from a strategic standpoint, I think that we need to stop aligning ourselves with just one party. I think it hurts.
I agree.
It hurts our vote as well. But I think that when you hear the media is so powerful. You have to, I kind of unplugged from the media for a while because I wanted to have my own thought process, to have my own thoughts that telegraphed to me and to come up, for my own thoughts to be pure of mind. It told us that when you put Hispanic votes together and Asian votes together and African American votes, that this was a powerful force. Well, I beg to differ. I think that white America came to the polls at this event, and they showed us how powerful the white vote is. Mm-hmm. And they did it resoundingly. I mean, Donald Trump, he went into traditional Democratic areas and did well. And so the Democrats need to ask, what message are they sending out to Republicans that really gravitated towards those people?
Well, you know what the true message is? The true message is that they got to stop coming to the black neighborhood only time when it's time for the vote. During any other process, they don't come into our neighborhoods and don't do anything for the black neighborhood. But when it's time to vote, they want us all to jump in line. And maybe that's the main thing this time, that we didn't all jump in line like we were supposed to.
Well, again, I hear exactly what both of you guys are saying. So we have Barack Obama. He's our so-called African-American president. He was out there. He won almost by landslide in both those elections. Black people came out and voted for him. And you can't say that he wasn't in those black communities because he was. He was in those black communities. Warren Trump was in those black communities. So why didn't the black community come out, or the so-called black community come out, the so-called African-American people come out, and vote for Hillary Clinton when it was needed? Because if the black vote came out the way Obama wanted them to come out, she would have won. So what was going on with Obama and the black community that Trump had more power over him than Obama did?
I think that Hillary Clinton comes to us with a lot of baggage, to be honest with you. And when you look at the NAFTA deal where it sent all the manufacturing jobs, the bill signed by Bill Clinton, Hillary's husband, the bill signed, but it sent a lot of the manufacturing jobs overseas. It hurt a lot of people in the South, in the Midwest, in the Rust Belt. And I think people were very leery of that. It sent so many manufacturing jobs overseas that a lot of the middle class were impacted. And I think there was some concerns that maybe if she was put in office again, would it get even worse?
Those manufacturing jobs was going anyway. They was going anyway, and people think coming back, they're not coming back. Let's be honest. Those jobs are not coming back.
And I'm going to tell you one thing, though. But he spoke to the language to those people where they believed that he could do that. Whether he could do it or not, that's something that only history will tell. Mm-hmm. But people really wanted those jobs back. A lot of people don't want to go to college. They want to work these manufacturing jobs that their dads and their moms have worked for years. And I think that, Bill Clinton, when he said that, he said, we're going to focus on the high-tech jobs and the manufacturing jobs we're going to send overseas. He didn't look at those people. It was sleight of hand, and it hurt a lot of people. And I think people have long memories. When you look at Trump supporters, some of the ones who weren't educated or not educated, those manufacturing jobs really hurt them when they were sent out in the country. They suffered.
Yeah, NAFTA was one of the worst business deals, one of the worst things that they could have made. for this country. But truth is that the fact that corporations wanted those jobs to go over, not just Clinton. And that's what people don't understand. That was a corporation dream. Here, you can pay somebody here $5 an hour, $6.50, $7 an hour, some spots $10 an hour. Then you send that job to India and you have to pay somebody $1.50 an hour. Corporations love that. And that's why those jobs are coming back here.
But was it really corporations, or was it really a global initiative to try to take these jobs out of the United States and try to cause global parity in other areas, plus to shift the manufacturing from the United States over to China, and even away from Mexico, but over to China, who is now the manufacturing seat of the whole entire world? That just doesn't come by accident. So
I think it's the globalism. It's the globalism, right? So when they talk about globalism, it's bigger than the United States, right? So it's those powerful forces that dictate global trade throughout the world. So it's not just a United States problem. It's the globalization of jobs and markets and everything, where they see these huge conglomerate companies. They just see a huge global place where they want to play in, and that they can make those demands and they can shift resources so easily across boundaries. So it's bigger than the United States. It's that word globalization. Why should my investments be impacted because something happens over in China or Asia or whatever? But that's what happens now. And I don't think it's going to ever come back now. The hand is dealt now. And so, like Mr. Mitchell said, those jobs are not going to come back in my mind. But it could be different. But that word globalization, it transcends boundaries. And it's very powerful, those key players.
The truth and matter of the fact, the truth of the matter of fact is right now you have McDonald's workers that want $15 an hour. And they're going to get them. But if you go into McDonald's here in New York, you now have a chance to walk up to a board and put your money in electronically, put your order in electronically, pay electronically, and there's only one person sitting behind the counter in a lot of McDonald's who's taking your order. They'll cut back the jobs on people and just replace it with electronics. A lot of the stuff that we want, corporatization, you got to understand the whole idea of having corporate is to spend $1 and to make $10 profit. They're not trying to spend a lot of money. And that's what's changing the world. That's the whole thing of capitalism. I guess that goes back into the whole pretense of the show, whether it's a Jim Crow area or, but the truth of the matter is that this whole thing changed way back in the 70s when you had a thing that we really started pushing out called credit. Throughout the 70s, all of a sudden in the 70s, we had a high rise when it comes to pay. Then all of a sudden they cut that back and they started pushing out credit. And everything now been credit, getting people in debt, and everything goes to hand. See, the whole thing about now is that slavery is a whole different being than what it used to be. Before, you had a bunch of black people and you put them in a cell and they worked hard and they worked all day from sun up to sunset, and then you rest them. You probably had to feed them. But if they got out of line, you whipped them. Slavery now is you put somebody with a cell phone, you sit them in front of a computer, and you work them all day long, and you work them all night long, and they go home, and they sit in front of a computer at their own house, and they're doing more work till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. What's the difference? Now you might have them under a salary. Go ahead.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of different types of points there. And when you get down into slavery, just want to touch on that real quick. Since the 13th Amendment of the United States, that gave permission for them to keep the original indigenous people in chains, just in a different way. And a lot of that came through the jailing system. And as we see today, the jailing system has over 2.3 million people, and almost 1 million of those people that are in jail today are original indigenous people of various different types of persuasions. And then when you get to that, we're only 13% of the population of the United States, and these people that are in jail are able to be sent out on different types of missions to work for free. So you have more people in jail today than you had in slavery back in the 1850s. Believe it or not. And
I believe that.
That goes into saying a lot in terms about, when you're getting in also to the point as to where you're talking about, we're talking about globalism and everything like that. Donald Trump came out and he said, we're going to put America first. We're going to put America first. And every single country on the face of the earth and political leader was after the United States and their people not to vote this man in, because he wasn't going to go for the North Atlantic trade agreement. He wanted to renegotiate or cancel out NAFTA and take us out of a lot of bad deals of all these trade deals. And not only that, but one of the most important things, the most significant things that are affecting the original indigenous community today, which is immigration. He's going to completely get that under control. So how can you say that black people didn't come to some sort of sense and say, we're going to vote for him because he speaks more to our values than any of these other candidates who don't speak towards our values at all?
The reason why is because he might speak towards the values of things that he would never probably get accomplished, but at the same time, he was also disrespecting black people by a lot of stuff that he said on racism. He pushed a lot of racist boundaries to separate this country. If you put yourself on a level of being a separatist, it's hard to bring people together at the end of the day.
What did he really do to that was racist? What did he really say that was really racist and was putting people against each other, black or white?
He came off in the beginning and lined himself with the Ku Klux Klan and said everything that he possibly could to get that line of vote. Let's be honest.
Such as?
Let's be honest.
What did he say?
Okay, let's go back into a lot of stuff he says, besides calling Mexicans rapists and all other kind of stuff about.
Well, that's Mexico. That's Mexicans.
No.
That's Mexicans, right? Those are illegal aliens crossing over the. People are not. They are illegal aliens that are illegally in our country, and they're not supposed to be here, whether they're having kids or not, on our dime. He said he was going to send them back, build a wall, and make sure that these people come over here legally. I don't see a problem with that. If he wants to try to make sure that people are in this country legally, I don't think that's racist. I think that's more of a, he's upholding to the statute of law. And where there is no law in any country, I mean, it's lawlessness. You have anarchy. So is that really racist?
If that was the case, then in the beginning of the time, his family wouldn't be able to come here if we held those kind of values. He wouldn't be here if we held those kind of values.
No, but again, back in 1492, when this actual war started against the original indigenous people of America, there was a lot of things that happened. And now that we're in a system that has been perpetuating itself now for almost 500 years, we're in a situation as of now where they're voting people into office and who are going to try to stop other people coming in here and displacing us out of our own communities. Look at Los Angeles. Los Angeles, a lot of that used to be all black. Now you got Chicago's living in there, and most of those people are illegal. Where are our people going, and who is really trying to protect them? And you know what my main thing is. My main thing is that with the United Front Line, reestablished independent indigenous nations of North America, I don't even think any of us need to really be in this system, and that we need to take ourselves out of the system and recreate our homeland.
But you think Donald Trump is going to protect you?
No, that's exactly the reason why I said I don't even think, the election is fine for us to talk about, but in terms of us actually having any kind of influence of really having a right to self-determination within inside of this government at all, these elections mean absolutely nothing. But what does mean everything for us is our own independence in a land where we can govern ourselves.
Guys, I just want to chime in here. So for me, the perspective is that when you look for politics to solve issues within the community, you will be disappointed. And so as an American, I think that you should buffer yourself that no matter who's in office, you can sustain and take care of your responsibilities. And that's the important thing. I don't want to play races against each other because of background. This country, and a lot of people's country, it's so mixed. And whether people know it or not, they're mixed with so many different races. I think that's a dangerous avenue. I think that as a community, though, the black community needs to look at itself from a financial, educational perspective and take care of their business. That's important.
Well, we learn a very valuable situation from other governments around the country. And we don't have to go any further than look at apartheid South Africa, which right now we have more people institutionalized than they did in apartheid at its height. And it's extremely important for us to have an understanding that if you do not have a political, economic, and a land-based system, there's absolutely nothing that you can do for your people inside of a system that controls you, that hates you, and that has put every effort into it in both political aspects to try to eradicate you and your species off the face of the earth. And until we're able to put ourselves in a situation as to where we can protect ourselves and have our own political, economic, and land-based political system, anything that we do here inside of this government is worthless. And you have to go no further than to look at what you would call Black Wall Street to understand that when you begin to start rising yourself up, the only thing that they will do will send military troops, police officers, and citizens to firebomb everything that you put up there together and destroy you right in your heart. Right now, we're nothing more than slaves beckoning at our master's will, hoping that they'll come into our inner cities and fix our problems when we should be depending on ourselves.
I definitely think that we have to depend on ourselves, and that's why it's so important for anyone to grab education. So this is a capitalist country, and nothing speaks more powerful than the resources that you can bring to the table. You don't have to live in your communities, but certainly if you aim your monetary might at this so-called government, I think that speaks volumes that they'll have to respect that. And when you look at the African-American community or indigenous community, whatever, you can see, like Mr. Mitchell had mentioned earlier, how carefree and careless they are with their money. The market is tight now, so if you stop buying one product and support a different product, they will have to come to the table. But until we direct our income and our resources together in an appropriate way, you won't get the respect for the community that we're looking for. It's self. You have to take care of yourself and your community, and you can't expect any type of government to do that. And until people understand that, they're always going to struggle.
I agree with you. I think
we do have another call that's on the line. He's from 770 area code. And if you would like to make a comment, you can interject yourself at any particular time. If not, if you're just here to listen, then listen, and we'll take your comments later on if possible. We still have about 30 minutes left to the program.
No, thank you for taking my call. There is something I'd like to say. I heard the discussion about immigration policy a moment ago, for instance. Are you gentlemen familiar with Mexico's immigration policies and laws?
I am very familiar with Mexico's immigration policy, and it's one of the most stringent policies in what you would call North America. And,
absolutely. And in fact, I think for the most part, it's a sound policy. It's what the United States should adopt. And I'm trying to understand why it is, because Congress is given the authority to establish a uniform law of immigration and naturalization. That basic, simple strictures are all of a sudden racist. You know what I think it is? I don't think it's got a doggone thing to do with race. I think it's got to do with cultural Marxism more than anything else. And when you look at what happened with this election, and you look at what happened with the Democrats, let's look at what Obama did in just 8 years of his presidency. He and the Democrats single-handedly, no bipartisanship, not one iota of it, inflicted Obamacare on the United States. And it's been an utter wreck, an anchor on the economy. And it doesn't deliver health care.
I agree.
Muslim Spring and the rising of Muslim Brotherhood and ISIS. He put radicals on the Supreme Court. He unilaterally violated immigration law, the written law with executive order. He fought the flooders with Muslim immigrants under the auspices of refugees. He destroyed or sought to really mess up the coal mining industry. He tried to destroy the natural gas industry. He added $10 trillion to the national debt, more than all the other presidents of the United States combined. He gutted the military. He destroyed the nuclear family, promoted homosexuality. He messed up Guantanamo. He directed the EPA to go buck wild, destroying business and hamstringing projects. And he stocked the federal public service with, you know what he did. And then they wonder why he lost. Hillary Clinton was promising more of the same. These people ought to be glad that they didn't get worse.
And I agree with you. I'm not a Hillary Clinton fan. I'm not an Obama fan. I don't like what Obama brought to this country. So I'll go on record to say that, and that's something that I've said before. I do not think he was good for the country. I do not.
Now, there's no doubt that he wasn't good for the country. Now, let's look at Donald Trump. Not true. The man is vulgar, crass, boisterous, and braggadocious, okay? He's not my choice for the kind of character I'd like to see as president. My guy was Ronald Reagan, okay? And he ain't Ronald Reagan. But not in that sense.
That's right.
No, but in the sense of being what I believe, whatever his character flaws, I believe he's a patriot. I believe he wants what's best for this country and its people in the main. He's a blue-collar type of billionaire. He appreciates working-class people with skills because those are the kind of people that made him rich. People who can operate bulldozers and weld and pipe fit and do masonry and do civil engineering, that sort of thing. He definitely appreciates those people. He doesn't turn his eye to them. He doesn't turn his nose up at them. He doesn't view them with contempt and their beliefs, and he's not really an elitist, even if he's a billionaire. So
I can tell that because all the other elitists are actually against him.
In my mind, and I'm sorry, I apologize. In my mind, there were some things that Donald Trump said that spoke to me. He didn't, I didn't find it offensive to that in regards to a lot of things that he said.
Here's what I think he may do. This is what I think he may do. I think he may drag the black community kicking and screaming with protests to greater prosperity, just as they were dragged kicking and screaming under Ronald Reagan, because every single significant metric that indicates greater economic well-being was up enormously during the Reagan years in the black community, without exception. But the black community got mad about it because it wasn't done the liberal, progressive, Democrat way. And they were angry about it. It's unbelievable.
I don't agree with that.
When you look back on it, you can come to no other reasonable conclusion.
I don't agree with that.
Now, we also have another caller on the line from area code 314, and if you would like to have any comment as well, you can interject yourself unless you're just on the line listening. I just want to give the callers a chance to be able to speak their mind, because this is a very important conversation. So,
yes, it is.
So, Mr. Mitchell, Cory Mitchell, you're saying that you don't agree with.
No, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. As far as black people kicking and screaming and growing to economics under Reagan, that was not happening. A lot of black people were struggling underneath Reagan. and they struggle badly
there are a
under
lot of
Reagan.
people struggling under every administration, and will always be. That will never be changed. But let's look at the objective criteria as established by the Census Bureau, which is probably the most reliable overall indicator of economic health among the greatest majority of people.
Reagan got out of office.
But since it's so broad and widespread, it's a really good indicator. Are you aware of what those figures showed for the Reagan years?
Yep.
Yes, I am. I'm aware. And actually, when Reagan got out of office,
if you look at the
Reagan got out of office, and the first thing Bush tried to do was raise the taxes.
In and out of the labor force, if you look at high school graduation rates, I don't care what metric you choose. Everything was up for the positive in the Reagan years.
The positive of the Reagan years was stocks. Stocks was up, and that was a positive during the. In the beginning, stocks was rising. Capitalism was on the rise under Reagan years.
And Trump has similar economic policies.
I think when you look at the government as a savior, I think that's an issue, right? So, and rolling back,
but Reagan didn't try to save black people. What he did was create an atmosphere that was good for economics and business. Blacks benefited just like everyone else.
Well, let me tell you what Reagan did say about the black
community. It's not the president's job to improve your life as an individual. It's hard enough to be chief executive of the executive branch of the United States government and do a good job with that and worrying about trying to improve everybody's individual station in life. That's why you have a
you just said that, but then you blame Obama for doing half of the stuff that you just said. That's kind of hypocritical.
No, sir. Believe me, my message is consistent. Believe me, I am very consistent. You have a local and a state government to do those sorts of things, and you have your own network of people with whom you associate to bring yourself out of your status and to improve it. It's not the federal government's job to do it beyond what is enumerated in the Constitution.
So your premise is pretty much really, it's more of a conservative type notion, whereas it's less federal government involvement and more state government involvement and a more personal, local aspect of things.
Well, thinking that you're closer to it, you have more of an influence on it than you have on some legislators far away in Foggy Bottom, D.C., and most of the powers to do things that people think government should do to improve their lives are with the states. They're not with the federal government. They're certainly not enumerated in the Constitution, but the 9th and 10th Amendment leaves pretty much everything that the Constitution forbids to the states within the states.
Well,
so why would you go to D.C. first?
Because one of the things is that D.C. does is that they give out a lot of money. And they hold the state.
Well, see, that's part of the problem, isn't it? That's why we're always $20 trillion in debt. Discretionary spending. That's the debt in the history of the world. Combined.
That is true. 20 trillion. 20 trillion.
We got that way. We didn't get that way because we were spending it on defense, which, by the way, is one of the enumerated responsibilities of the federal government. But we didn't get that way by spending it on bombs and bullets.
No. One of the things I do want to bring up is what Reagan said about those people who did not support it. He said that somebody asked him a question as to, are you going to be a president of everyone? He said, I'm going to be a president of those people who supported me. They helped me to get here. And he said, and I do have an obligation, whether you like it or not, to help support those people that supported the ideals upon which I was elected on. And which was a really serious wake-up call politically for every so-called African American, as we call them now, original Indigenous American people of this country. So the question is, do you think anybody here that we just elected Jim Crow into office, and those types of policies might be coming back in terms of putting more blacks in jail? And creating a system as to where people are going to have to show certain IDs and stuff like that for them to be able to vote. And is it going to get into a political situation as to where it's going to be a lot harder on the original Indigenous Americans of this country, the so-called African American people?
Absolutely not. I do not think Jim Crow requires imposition by law. The 14th Amendment specifically forbids it. And the idea of being involved in incarceration requires some measure of cooperation from the people who get locked up. Now, I know a lot of people think the police, fake everything and trump up charges on every single black man that gets arrested, but that isn't so. It does require a certain degree of cooperation from the people getting arrested. So I would submit to you that if there's a bit less cooperation amongst the people who are purported to be the targets of this incarceration, there'll be a lot less of it.
I agree with you on that point.
I agree with that.
I think one of the points that we haven't spoken about is that the impact of the Supreme Court. And for me, that's the most important piece right there, how they dictate law. Currently, I think that it was even in reference to Republicans and Democrats. So how these Supreme Court justices, they're there for a lifetime. So even after a president's candidacy is over, they'll have impact to the interpretation of law in this country for quite a long time.
It certainly will, and when you get people out there who think that the Supreme Court was intended to be a representative body like that idiot Clinton, because that's what she said, Supreme Court needs to be representative of the people. No, it doesn't. I don't care if every one of them is black. I don't care if every one of them is a woman. I don't care if every one of them is a man or a white man. The only thing I care about is that they honestly interpret the Constitution as it lies. That's all. The representative body is the House of Representatives. That's what the representative is supposed to be. That's who represents you.
In your mind, is the Constitution a living document, or it's just as it is?
It's fixed and enumerated, and if you want to change it, you amend it. Or you have an Article 5 convention. Then you can change it. It's fixed. How would you like to play me? Let's play a game of poker by living rules. What do you say my two of a kind beats your royal flush? I feel like changing rules today. I don't think so.
Well, that's how Obama looked at it, because he supposedly graduated, I believe, from Harvard Law School in constitutional law. And he said that
Obama, a constitutional scholar, the man is a Marxist. That's what he is. And when you're a Marxist, the rules never apply. He said so. He said the problem with the Constitution was that it wasn't radical enough, that it failed to deliver proper redistribution of wealth and resources. He said it in an NPR interview. That man no more believes in the Constitution. Probably he believes in the tooth fairy. He governed by executive order. He made, for instance, like with illegal immigration. The guy sat up there and literally changed the legislation, which did not allow for the issuance of work permits or Social Security numbers to illegal aliens. And this guy just arbitrarily on his own said, since Congress won't act, I have to, so I think I'll do it. And they didn't have the guts to impeach him.
Now, Dark Matter Radio, and you're listening to did Jim Crow just get elected, or did slavery ever end? And we're on the radio now having a very good discussion dealing with this whole entire situation. And I have to say that what does this mean with the ideology of the whole entire Democratic Party, being that they had Bernie Sanders up there, and people are saying Bernie Sanders probably should have ran for president, and then you have the star Obama and Hillary Clinton, who just lost in the election, which wasn't supported by so-called African-American people. I have to say they weren't supported because they didn't come out and vote for her. So what do you say?
Well, we don't have to speculate over much on the proximity of Bernie Sanders' candidacy and its torpedoing and the collusion that went on between the DNC and the Clinton campaign. They literally, I'm not sure if they actually stole the nomination from him, but they certainly crippled it. And it's out in the open, and it's uncontrovertibly true. I mean, I don't understand why any people want to stay with the Democratic Party anymore. I guess it's kind of like me witnessing the turmoil between the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks. But nonetheless, they need to have a real realignment of their party if they believe in their principles at all.
Well, the principles, as you're expounding them, and some of us on here today, they will call the majority of you guys racist for what you're expounding right now in terms of the ideology that you're putting out there. That you'll be racist against your own kind. What do you guys say about that?
Well, look, these people could call you anything. They call me Martian or Venusian for all what they want to. I care less. I know what objective, transcendent moral truth is. They don't. They believe in racial identity politics over and above all. That what you think is what your DNA says, as they see it, as their light see it. So I'm utterly unmoved by their arguments. They are corrupt and corrupted. So I don't take my guide lights or my lodestar or my belief system from people who wish to destroy the Constitution in this country.
So what do you say about that, Reggie Bryant? What do you say about that?
I think sometimes the truth hurts, and I think this is a time for the indigenous population to really reflect on where they stand in this country and their value system. And again, I'll always lead with the Great Society, where the Democrats rolled that out for people of color, and it's been a disaster. And so the African American communities definitely have to reflect and look at their value systems and strategic and find out what they need to do going forward. The past is the past. Certainly you can reflect on that. But now we must look forward to fix what's in our communities. And
we do. Look, I'm a black man. I was born on the south side of Chicago, raised culturally as a black man, been black all my life. I enjoy my vibrant black culture. I really do. And when I was born and I grew up, I was surrounded everywhere I looked, sir. I mean, everywhere I looked. There were proud, strong black men who were my role models, amongst them my father, a proud World War II veteran, a strong black man who taught me what it meant to be a man. They were everywhere.
Okay, yep.
They would snitch on me when I misbehaved. They'd call my parents and tell on me. And if they didn't put me online on the spot and check me, I got checked when I got home. Now, all of a sudden, that ain't going on. What happened to the two-parent black family? It was the norm when I was growing up. It no longer is. And that's in a lifespan of 50 years.
Well, there's a lot of things that changed, and I agree with you. I agree with you.
To know how that could happen when slavery couldn't do it, when Jim Crow couldn't do it, when the Reconstruction era couldn't do it, when Plessy versus Ferguson couldn't do it, when the Great Depression couldn't do it, when World War II couldn't do it. Now all of a sudden,
we're in this era, and again, of openness. We have to have an open heart for those people who live differently, and the old ways have to go by the way, because we're living in a new era now as to where, we can have children by 3 different parents. I don't know if you realize that, but about a month ago, we had our first child on Earth that was born with 3 different parents. So, you cannot, I mean, you're acting as though you're a hate monger. I mean, well, what are you guys talking about here?
Truly, I am. I'm just a seething cauldron of resentful hatred, am I not? Just think, I want a child to grow up with 2 parents. I think that's the ideal. Horrors! I'm just a human rights abomination, am I not?
In terms of all these people out here who agree with some of these political authorities, you'll have us under surveillance, and these Jones are going to come by and smack us down and cart us away, not to be heard again, because as you know, Obama did sign into law that they can take American citizens and kill them at will through drone strikes, even on American soil if need be. He also signed into law that you can be taken out of your home for anything, just to be accused as though you're a terrorist. But being a terrorist now is if you're a Christian, if you're a Catholic.
Don't you remember not too long ago Barack Obama called for people to snitch on people who were telling what he termed untruths about the health care plan, which now turned out to be true? We know now they're true. And remember, he said he wanted people to snitch on him. Remember?
That's right. Yeah.
This is typical of a leftist and a Marxist. Everywhere you go, there are networks of informers. I mean, this guy is a classic. I mean, I've got both of his books on my shelf. I've read them both. I know what he is. When I used to live in Chicago, he was my state senator. I've known about this guy since 1994. I know what he is. He's an abomination. He really is.
Well, he suddenly appeared out of nowhere. And remember, Obama appeared out of nowhere with this new name that he that seemed to be just put upon him around that particular time.
Well, I know for a fact, beyond a reasonable doubt, he is committing identity fraud. He's got a counterfeit birth certificate. It's indisputable. He's got forged selective service registration, multiple Social Security numbers that were never issued to him. If you go to the Cook County property identification number for his house at 5046 South Greenwood in Chicago, you'll see he's not even listed as the owner. A gentleman named William Mitchel is, whose law firm he used to work as a young lawyer. Now, why is that? Why do we have Secret Service protection outside of that house?
Well, this man was born in Hawaii. You know that. Even though his grandmother said he remembers his birth over there. I don't know. He's got a forged birth certificate. When you present a forged birth certificate to me, that means I don't know where you were born. I don't know where you were born. I know the only thing I know is he's got a counterfeit birth certificate. That wasn't issued by the state of Hawaii, what's on the White House website. Now, the question is why. And the question is not where he was born. The question is, why did he present to the American people a counterfeit birth certificate? That's the question. That is a very,
that's what happens when you want to distract people. You get them away from the real question. Well, why could you say where it was born? How do you know? Well, I don't know. The answer is I don't know. I know if you're looking for a job and you bring me for a job a counterfeit birth certificate, I can readily see it's counterfeit. I'm going to want to know why you give me a counterfeit birth certificate.
That's right. We got to finish up in the program.
There's nothing on the birth certificate upon which I can rely because it's a counterfeit.
Well, how did he become a senator yesterday with a counterfeit birth certificate? Where was you guys at then?
Because they accepted his word for it and didn't do any investigation.
Where was you guys at then, though? How come you guys wasn't standing out young then?
The Democrats are utterly unscrupulous. So they didn't care. Frankly, they didn't care. We know he's not. Look, if you believe his life story, that is if you believe, and I don't, but if you believe his life story, he cannot be a natural-born citizen, as Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5 of the Constitution requires.
You know what I believe?
You have two citizen parents. How can you be a natural-born citizen owing allegiance to no other country when you were born a citizen of 3 countries, according to
what I believe? I'm going to tell you what I believe.
No, I'm asking a very simple question. A natural-born citizen has no other allegiance other than the country to which he was born in. I'm talking about a legal international claim of allegiance. Now, if you believe Obama's life story, which I don't, I think it's a lie, but let's say for the sake of argument it's true, then he was born a citizen of 3 countries due to the British Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1948. That means he was born a citizen of Great Britain, he was born a citizen of Kenya, and he was born a citizen of the United States to his mother.
So let me get Cory's. What do you believe, Cory?
Citizen?
Yeah. Let me get Cory's response to that. What do you believe, Cory?
I believe the gentleman gives a lot of excitement, and it sounds good. But all that excitement is not going to do what we need for move forward. Talking about Obama birth certificate doesn't change the fact that Trump is president now, and how do black people move ahead? Let's be serious.
Well, again, I would like to say that I think that by going, Trump offers a similar program to Ronald Reagan. I maintain, again, every single objective, measurable criteria.
As you said before,
by which you measure economic progress went up under Ronald Reagan. If black people, I didn't say it's exactly the same because it isn't, it's similar. And I think if that happens again, if that kind of policy gets implemented again, black people will prosper along with the rest of the country.
So I'm going to tell you this.
I thank you for your call. We're going to have to let you go now. We're coming at the end. Please go on to Blog Talk Radio, Dark Matter Radio, and follow, so then that way you can be a guest on the show again. Also, you can contact me on Ronnie McLean Speaks at gmail.com. Give me a shout-out on there as well. And we have about 1 minute left to the program. And thank you so much, caller. And we hope to have you
very
on
much
again.
for the time.
All right, take care. And so, Cory, give me your last impressions. We got about 30 seconds.
30-second last impression is for all Indigenous Americans, Black Americans, or just Americans in general. If you think that Donald Trump is on the similarity of Ronald Reagan, my best advice for you is save your money, get out of debt, and prepare. That's it.
Interesting.
Thank you for allowing me to be part of this.
Yep. How about you, Rich?
You know what? Keep the faith, people, and move forward. Be strategic. Move forward. You cannot depend on any government entity to sustain yourself. Move forward and be strategic.
Well, there you have it, guys. We're going to be doing this again, hopefully next weekend, and it's going to be extremely interesting as time goes forward. Thank you for listening to Dark Matter Radio with your host, Ronnie McLean, and our special guests, Reggie Bryant and Cory Mitchel, out of Atlanta, Georgia, and New York City. And we will talk to you guys soon. Thank you much. Take care. Have a great day. Peace. And keep the faith, y'all.